Okay, so I'm going to ask the first question, and I'm going to ask that Abigail answer first and then Javi answer second. So if you could tell us, please, how did you get to where you are? If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your background, and that would be great.
Absolutely. I see my husband and children watching right there. Hey guys. It actually begins with my husband. So I was a young teacher and I was teaching in a boys' school in Far Rockaway, Darche Torah. Maybe we have some in the audience that are alumni from there. And I was particularly drawn to my very energetic students, the ones that were asking tons of questions and, you can never quench it. And during recess, I'd stand outside and they'd take circles around me, asking me things, telling me things, all that. And I just found them so adorable and incredibly difficult to teach. And, but I started developing programs for them. They really pushed me to my limits in terms of, becoming a better teacher. At the very same time, I was looking for my husband. And, as some of my siblings who are also online right now might remember that when I came back from dates, I was really in a nasty mood. But one particular day, I came back and my mom said, "Well, how was it?" And I said, "Well, the guy was interesting. He had a lot of confidence and this kind of special energy." Well, special energy is this wonderful genetic thing that also creates special energy children. So whereas I started as a teacher of kids with ADHD and developing programs for those children, and they're close to my heart until to this day, I landed up becoming a mom of children who, out of my six, thank God, at least five were diagnosed with ADHD. So my children kind of brought me along in the same direction, but helped me develop a whole new area of expertise with this whole ADHD story. And I've really discovered a lot along the way, but I'd love to hear from Javi more, and then I'm sure I'll continue the story.
So when Abigail and I first met, we are new friends. And when we first met, she actually let me read part of her book. And I said, the two of us really are on the same page. Our goals in education and what we desire in education really are coming from the same place. And although we end up are the end up point, the recipients of our love for education goes to different niche groups, but nonetheless, we really are two women who share the same ideals in education and very much the same goals. I started seminary. I started CyberSem. When I went back to school. I felt after I had my my youngest child, who now is 21, when Menucha was a baby, not a baby, but she was 4 already, I decided that I needed to upgrade my own education. And that took me on a marvelous journey. So after I finished, as Debbie mentioned before, as I finished my master's, we were doing a program. I was doing a paper, and that paper led me to understand that you can do anything online except go to seminary. A girl cannot go to seminary online. A boy can even get smicha online, but a girl cannot go to seminary online. And so that was where my desire for upgrading my education. I knew that I was going to do a seminary online, and I wanted to be responsible. So I went and I got an Adhd, because my goal was that my students should be able to gain accreditation for the courses they take with me. And if I would have those magical letters before my name, then I knew that deans would speak with me and they would entertain what I was asking them. And such has borne true. I am able to break through more barriers because of those 2 silly letters in front of my name. So, so that is how I started seminary, and I was drawn I was drawn to help the niche market that I started off with is that girls should be able to continue their Torah learning when they come back from seminary, or they decide at our stage of life. There are many girls who lechatchila, who at first thoughts do not intend to go to seminary, especially a lot of people in North America, which is where I come from. So where I am, when Debbie announced in the beginning, whatever time of day it is, for you it's at night, but for me it's still in the afternoon, it's still light outside. But I really felt that a girl who was not going to seminary needed to continue her Jewish studies. So my course is enabling women, girls of whatever age, really whatever age you want to come back and continue your Torah learning. You can gain the accreditation that most of my courses are used for courses that are not necessarily the person's major, but they have to have certain other courses. And mine, let's say they're taking a history, they have to take a history course. So with CyberSem, you can gain your 3 credits and take a Jewish history course, and such for all of the other ones. And so I felt that I'm a gap filler. There's a gap between the number of girls who actually go to seminary. There's a gap between the educational opportunities for women from the time they leave high school until forever. And I was going to fill that gap a little bit with the online option. And we'll talk a little bit more about the online option a little bit later.
That's great. Thank you so much, Chavi. I think you skipped a little bit ahead to the part of the next question because you're already talking about it so passionately, which is fantastic. So my next question then for both of you is, how did you realize that this was your passion? And Chavi, you did touch upon it a little bit. So if you would like to continue a little bit and then let Avigail answer as well, that I think you could just segue from where you just left off.
That's true. I do. I really am passionate about it. Basically because I think that if we look around at the world, the need for women's Torah continuing education is so very, very relevant. The boys have their issues, the girls have their issues, and education is really at the bottom, at the Adhd of the solution to people becoming less interested in their Judaism. And here the girls are starting their professional lives, their lives in whatever profession or skill or niche that they love, and they're going to continue learning about it, whether it's in architecture or it's in graphic design. Whatever you pursue in life, there's always an opportunity to upgrade yourself. We have computers needed to be upgraded, and people needed to be upgraded. And the other issue is that there's so many areas in our lives, there are many times in our lives, especially now, where skills become obsolete. And when the skills that we have become obsolete, we need to sometimes be retrained and expose ourselves and open ourselves to this retraining. And how come our Yiddishkeit lags behind? We can be happy finishing, okay, there's Torah anytime, and there are many other excellent classes and excellent outlets for us to learn. But here we're being offered a full class, a full course, and that's a huge difference. You're taking someone and you're signing up for something, for a subject that you want to delve into. And although this is not talking about we're not going into the depths of CyberSem, but as far as my passion goes, this is the reason why I'm saying it, is that CyberSem, the courses are designed that the women should love what they're doing, should be empowered to continue their Torah learning into opening up books that they never thought that they would open again. And these should be a relevant, a dynamic part of their lives. And that's because that is the passion of a Jewish woman. I'm sharing that with others, and I'm hoping others will come with me on this journey and enjoy the CyberSem classes that we've developed and are continuing to develop to make this passion a reality. Avigail.
Thank you.
Okay. So my passion runs parallel to my story. So when my husband was a child, and this is very much a tribute to his upbringing and my wonderful in-laws, when he was hyper and he had to draw little feet on the floor to keep his feet in, because that would remind him that he had to keep his feet on the floor and not jump around the classroom. He was not considered in any way problematic. He was not pathologized. He was considered a high energy Superman, a Superman who was great at sports and great at making friends and great at a million things. And there were a couple of things there that, needed a little bit of extra help, some reading help, some this help. And that was fantastic. And that is the way I approached my students. And, when I saw a student was struggling, my question was never, what does this child have? What is his diagnosis? But rather, what's going on with this kid? Why is this child struggling? And then when my children were being diagnosed one after the next, I was suddenly being faced with a very different kind of treatment. Suddenly I was being told, your child can't sit, your child can't learn properly, your child's brain is limited. All these messages that sounded very fixed to me, sounded very opposite to my understanding of education. And my passion at first, I would admit, I started to believe the story. But then by mistake, I tripped on Nothing's by Mistake, directly from God. I tripped on this amazing book, actually, called Blaming the Brain. Worth reading. To me, it was like, a page turner novel, but it's actually just a really boring book about science of the brain and neurological disorders. And what Dr. Wallenstein actually confirmed for me was that there was nothing wrong with my child's brain, and that what we were not doing was we were not asking, why is your child struggling? And that's where my passion really took on a new level. Now, I like to blame my children's energy on my husband, but I'm hardly a quiet and passive person. So I think they might get it from both sides of the family. The point is, the point is that what I started developing were programs for parents and for teachers, where we looked at children again. And what we did was we reinfused curiosity. What's going on with this child? Instead of why, what is this child? What's happening with this child? Is it a child's personality in conflict with his or her environment, which is very often the case? Or is it that the child is struggling with something? Is the child as parents going through a divorce? Is there some kind of stress? Very interestingly, I'll just add, when one of my sons was diagnosed with celiac, the pediatrician, wonderful doctor, he says to me, very often with celiac comes ADHD. And I said, why is that, doctor? And he didn't know quite how to answer me, but the answer actually is the gut-brain connection, which means that if your gut is disordered, then your brain can't function as well. But that's not what they're looking for when they're diagnosing child after child. They're not looking at the whole child. They're not asking questions about the gut. They're not asking questions about the environment. They are just diagnosing and medicating. So my direction and what landed me with writing the book, and I really am not, I'm not a natural writer. I'm a natural teacher, and to sit and have to focus for so many hours typing was quite torturous, I have to admit. But the book had to be written because parents have to understand that when they look at their child, they should not be seeing a disordered child. They should not ever be seeing a child who can't. They should be seeing a healthy child who is struggling with certain things and doing great in other areas. And that's my message. And I'm extremely, as I'm sure you can tell, passionate about that. And thank God I've been able to help many families and many children, and also my teachers, that I teach teachers, and to kind of detox my teachers from this understanding that we have a disabled child, disordered child, and get them to an understanding of stop, be curious, treat this child as a healthy child because she and he are. And there's the passion, and that's the direction.
That's great. Thank you. And you actually also alluded a little bit to the next question. It was a good lead into the next question, which is really what is your general approach for both of you? What is your general approach to education, and what do you think is the most important thing and best helps others learn, students and adults, obviously. And Avigail, you talked a little bit about it, and if you can elaborate first on how this relates to kids and how educators and parents can learn as well, and then hand it over to Chavi when you're done. Thank you.
Okay, so what my major focus is taking children from, and Chavi and I talked about this a lot, taking children from a fixed mentality where they know who they are and what they can and they can't do, and that can't be changed. Taking them from that fixed mentality into a process-oriented mentality, meaning anything is possible. Obviously, this is taken from the book Mindset, which is fantastic, and you all should read it, by Carol Dweck. She also gives a lot of lectures on YouTube. But that is the direction I take, which is we start with a child and we look at the child, where is he holding now? And I like to say to my students, Basher hu sham, where is he located this minute? And what do we do with him in order to start building him? I tell my teachers, never look at a child and say, well, she's in 6th grade. She should know how to behave like a 6th grader. Well, no, maybe she shouldn't, because she just hasn't developed those skills. So if we make assumptions, we're going to miss the child. We're not looking at the child's environment. We're looking directly at that child. Where is she now? What can she do now? And where do we want to go with her? And we have to travel in a process. If a child is told ever that they can't, or that they are a certain way, they will not budge from that. And that will actually create a lot of ADHD kind of behaviors, such as avoidance, because they don't want to show anyone that they can't do something, or they're not smart, or acting super hyper because they want to mask how painful it is to be told that they can't be good students. So I start there, and then I start with the parents or the teachers to build a program for each individual child after I ask 1,000 questions, and to figure out what's going on. And when you ask the questions, the child will tell you what's happening in his or her life and will be able to direct you. It was my son's bar mitzvah was actually last Shabbos Hanukkah. It was quite beautiful. And the rest of the week, he got so excited about laning that he wanted to lane every day. So he learned the Rosh Chodesh laning, and he kind of learned it on his own, and he kind of butchered it in shul. And if you take a child who is told you cannot quite do things, then that child will be devastated and will not be able to see it as a learning experience. When we got back from shul, I asked my son how it was, and he said, wow, I really messed it up. So now I need to practice even better for next month to read Rosh Chodesh. So that is the goal, is to get children away from being ashamed of themselves and being ashamed of who they are and seeing themselves in a fixed way, and getting them to take the journey and learn from the mistakes, never protecting a child from mistakes, because that's how we learn, and taking them to become and helping them to become process-oriented children. So we go through a bunch of different programs. We start with a behavioral program, and then we go to emotional program. We develop a health program, because diet and exercise are extremely important. And something that's incredibly missing from children's lives, obviously, is, there's my bar mitzvah boy, is obviously nature and exposure to nature, which is incredible for developing a child's brain. And then we look to see if there's any trauma, but we go from every single direction, and then we slowly help children build new habits. And they can, as long as they know that building a habit makes them stronger, and that messing up and not getting it perfectly right is part of the process. And that's what we all go through. So that's how I approach education for these children who've been labeled. And yeah, that's, and Javi, back to you.
Thank you very much. As we were preparing for this talk, I went to a little bit of theory in my preparations, and it was I was asked to limit it. But then when I was thinking about what I was putting in, they are so practical, and I'm going to continue from what Avigail left off in what we call brain-based learning, educational neuroscience, call it what you will, and there is really one theory. It's not a theory because when you go into the brain-based literature, these are things that this is how I got to my passion, so it really is relevant in view of the conversation that we're having, is that when I was in school and I had to learn about all the theorists, and I won't list their names, Skinner and all these guys, I did well and I could write fantastic papers, but I could never remember it. And then when I started learning about educational neuroscience, I said, this makes sense. Why does it make sense? Because this is really what is happening in our brains. We owe it to ourselves as educators, as parents, as anybody who deals with anyone to understand what is going on in the brain. And although 10 years ago more, there was a disconnect between neuroscience and education. There was a lot of quasi stuff going on, but today it's not necessary to be afraid. There are many very fine neuroscientists or educators coming at it from both directions that really can translate the neuroscience messages into the classroom. Just for one example, I read extensively a woman, her name is Dr. Judy Willis. Dr. Willis is, she is what do you call it? A certified neurologist. She's an MD. And when she saw how many kids were coming into her neurology practice with recommendations from their schools that there was something wrong, and she would question them about the procedures and what was going on in their classrooms, she saw that there's nothing wrong with them. The teachers just didn't understand the kids. And the one piece that really struck me, and this is not theory again, the fMRIs allow the neurologists to see and to record exactly what's going on in the brain. Basically, it's the amount of blood that goes to different areas of the brain when the person is experiencing a certain stimulus. So whatever stimulus they give the person, they're looking to find out what is their reaction. Okay, now the one piece that really makes a difference and is so practical is one part of the brain, and it's called the limbic system. And in the limbic system is the seat of our emotions. Now, a brain is really, the brain is really there in order to save us when people were cavemen from animals that are going to destroy them. So the limbic system of our brains is structured in such a way that if there is any fear on the organism of the body, then the limbic system is going to say, no more thoughts can happen. That means the cognitive part of the brain will not be alerted. It will not get blood. It will not get energy. How does that impact us? It means that if a kid is sitting in a classroom and they are afraid, they are nervous, they are anxious about anything that's happening in their lives. It could be COVID. It could be coming back to school after not being in school so long. And if they are in a classroom where their emotions are not being honored, are not being respected, are not being recognized by the teacher, parent, whoever it is, then the reaction that the brain is going to do when that teacher, parent, whoever it is going to approach them, it's going to be fight, flight, or freeze. They are going to become wild in the classroom or at home. They're going to go back into themselves, like Abigail said before. The fight, flight, or freeze reaction of the organism of the body is going to kick in. And it doesn't mean the kid is bad. It doesn't mean the kid is wild. It doesn't mean the kid can't concentrate. It just means that the amygdala, the part of the limbic system that controls the ability of the prefrontal cortex to moderate, let's just leave it at that one, to think, to moderate emotions, to moderate behavior, it is not functioning. So my piece when I came here is that this is so practical. And now that we're dealing with, we wanted to get into education. So the educational piece of this is now that we are coming back to schools from COVID breaks, and in Israel, they have had back and forth, sometimes on, sometimes off. It's not consistent anything. That's enough to cause anxiety in any child. And this is my message, because when the teachers should concentrate now, not so much on the cognitive, not so much on your curriculum, your content that you have to teach. I think based on this learning, the practicality of it is concentrate on making a relationship with your children, on recognizing the signs that this child is about to tip over the deep end, and make that grant that child the emotional safety that will prevent the fight, flight, or freeze reaction to take place. Don't label them. Relate to them as to what they need. And the brain-based learning, the educational neuroscience is relevant, it's practical, it's real. This is how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created us.
Wow,
I think we're just about to go into another lockdown right now, actually, Chavi. Just a news update.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
so then it's the parents who are doing it, and the teachers who are doing it, because they back and forth get it. But this is a reality. We need to reframe. And this is the piece that Abigail was talking about, the fixed versus growth mindset, is we have to reprogram our mindsets of how are we going to respond to the stresses of our kids. It's not, and the option of they are bad, they are lazy, they are incompetent, they can't. If I would ask you all to write something in the chat of what else the students are, you would all be able to give me a dozen. They are not any of those, and none of those are ever options. They are brains, they are children with multiple pieces to them, multiple facets to them. And we as parents, as teachers, need to recognize that and teach to the whole child, because they are, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem, did not create brains. He created people. He created whole people. And that is, if we're talking here about education, this is an area where our education really can take a lesson from it. And it's so relevant today. If there was any time where we need to reprogram our mindsets, I think Corona has sent us in that direction.
Interesting. Go ahead, Abigail. Did you want to add something to that?
Nope. I think
Okay,
that was
so
great.
I'm gonna, if not, then I'm
right
gonna
on
move.
point.
Okay, great. I'm going to move on to the next question, which again, if we're talking about lockdowns back and forth and the upheaval that children and adults are going through right now. So let's talk a little bit about what the theme of the webinar is, and that is how to get the most out of this online learning, this newfangled thing that we call right. Zoom learning, Zoom school, right? So first of all, do you think that online options, this is more for Chavi at this point, are making adult education, for one thing, a more popular choice? And especially for women who decide to go back to school or take classes, what would you like them to know? And probably more for you, Avigail, how how can we work within the framework of distance education, especially for kids with ADHD who can't sit and look at a screen all day? And are there benefits, if you can describe those benefits, both of you, and also what advice, that the meat of this whole thing is, what advice can you share? So
I'm going to ask that Avigail go first because
Go ahead.
it's going to be more directly to what you're saying, and I'm going to be off on a little bit more of a tangent.
that's totally fine. Go ahead.
Okay.
Please.
So actually, I can speak with two hats. One of them is as a college lecturer, and I teach teaching teachers in Herzog College here in Israel. And from that perspective, obviously, this is already the third semester where I have not been able to meet my students. And I love my students. All I want to do is talk to them and hear from them. They've taught me more than anyone else, but I can't meet them. And I'm giving all of my lectures online. I'm actually recording it because a lot of my students don't even have screens. So they're listening to it by phone. And from the one side, that's super challenging because I want to meet them and they should meet me as well. But from the other side, a couple of interesting things have come out of it. One is that I actually go outdoors to record my lectures, and I'm out in my beautiful yard. And my students have been saying, you sound calm, you sound clear, the lessons are interesting. And I think a lot of that is being outdoors. And I always begin my lecture, I say, take your telephone and take a walk, leave your house and listen to this lesson outside. And I know that my students are learning more and absorbing more when they're able to do it outdoors and in a much less formal way. Besides for that, what I've noticed is that I have to give my students an assignment every week. And what's happened is that our communication's actually been bumped up to a little bit of a higher level, where through emails, they feel much more comfortable sharing things with me that they might not have in a classroom setting. So I'm getting to know their families a little bit more, and everyone has a story about their child or their niece or their nephew. And I think that because of this strange new way of communicating, we're actually making some headway. So as a teacher, I miss my students, I miss my classroom, but I have noticed that there are some benefits to the distance learning. In terms of being a mom of very energetic children, and my oldest is turning 22 this week, and my youngest is 10, and a couple of them have been in school maybe for 3 weeks this entire year. So what I have found to be the most powerful thing to do was, first of all, to organize the background, to get the space that they're going to learn in to be organized and set for them, a space to put their books, and a room that doesn't have a lot of interesting stimuli in it. No extra screens that they could go on to, like a phone or an iPad, just the screen that they have. But besides that, I actually did something slightly daring. I told them there are certain classes that they have to attend, the core classes. But besides for that, frankly, I don't think that the children have to attend gym class online, and they have gym class online, if you would believe it. And so what we started doing is developing all sorts of other skills. They're learning how to type quickly. And my daughter's been producing, shame I didn't send you a picture of her artwork, but she's been producing with online learning a beautiful artwork. And they've been learning very, very interesting things online that they would not have done if they were sitting in school. So what I tried to do was free myself and free my own mind from being trapped into, we are in the classroom in the house, because no, we're not. We're at home, and you're wearing a proper shirt and you're wearing pajama pants. Okay, it's good to get them dressed in the morning. I get that. But the point is, this is not class at home. This is home at home. And we're going to do some learning with your teacher, and some learning with me, and some learning with Abba. And then you're going to learn some interesting things and hobbies. And we've also been taking the opportunity to go out and hike a lot, which really, can you learn more than you can ever learn in nature? Nature is the most wonderful teacher. So we've been expanding our minds And, some of it's been frustrating and banging my head against the wall. The Zoom drops in the middle, all that stuff. Or suddenly there's a very short power outage and like 6 kids are screaming from 6 different rooms, Ima, help. But in the end, it's actually been quite enriching. Although I think it's nice for them to go to school and meet their friends, we have been able, oh, there's the picture. We have been able, does everyone see that? That's my daughter's picture. We have been able to really enrich them during this time, and it's been a blessing. It's all yours, Chavi.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to take the conversation a little bit in a different direction, because I have made this program that is specifically designed for the online delivery, and it is specifically for a specific niche group, starting from AP level grade 12, I say from between 20 and 120, that women of all ages. And so I've been asked to talk a little bit about distance education and adult education. So adult education implies that the women want to learn. So we're looking at a different demographics, because there are some demographics of girls who either are not going to seminary, have been to seminary, and now, what's next? But the will of the student, the will of the adult student is there. It's a voluntary thing, and it's not the same as the compulsory education that takes our children up until grade 12. And so when they come into the classroom, the instructor really doesn't have to deal with disciplining the class, because people are there voluntarily. And so the class is there because they want it to be there. The adult education is going to allow the students a financial gain. Maybe they may be retraining themselves, they may be upgrading themselves. So they have the motivation that they're going to be upgraded in the financial sphere, and they will have greater earning capabilities. Then we have something that Abigail mentioned, and that I wrote down here as being, and this is what we've seen from the educational front, and Abigail has experienced it with her children, with her own students, and that is that the students open up more. And so in her platform, they send her more emails. In CyberSem, in our distance education, for example, in our discussion postings, the shy student will tend to open up easier because they have the safety net of anonymity while they are learning their subjects. And so for some people, for many people, in order for them, they wouldn't open up in a classroom, and for sure they wouldn't open up in a huge university classroom that has bleachers and can have hundreds of students in it once. But on the online platform, they will open up, and that's Latoiva, that's for their good and their benefit, in their personal development and in their educational success. I've been on discussion postings where we have fantastic sharing of information. In the discussion postings in CyberSem, I like to structure the courses so that the discussion posts take the information, the knowledge that they gain from the instructor, and make it and own it and make it their own. That's how the discussion postings are structured. So the students have to answer a question, plus they have to respond to the answers to the postings of 2 more students. That makes for a very rich knowledge interaction between them. So all of the students are reading more, they're internalizing it, they're transferring it to their own lives, and they're able to express it to someone who they may not ever see, but they certainly are willing to engage in that kind of a relationship in a more open way that they would get almost in any other place, in any other interaction. So then we have the features of the distance education. It allows for interactive learning. So we have discussion postings, we have collaborative assignments. The assignments that we have are adult-based. The students are going to become 21st century workers, people in the workforce in the 21st century, and they need the skills and the mindset to be able to interact with people all over the world. And so we avail them that also. And here we have distance education really filling in a gap, as I'm going to use the word a second time, but a gap that there really is in our educational pieces. And one last piece that I do want to answer before I say that, another piece that CyberSem puts into courses, and that is, I told you about collaborative assignments, and the other is tours. We have in our Historia courses, even though the students aren't able, even the ones who have come to Israel this year, and for sure the ones who aren't, in our Historia courses, I've got one almost finished and the second one is already in production, whereby we've introduced a tour component where I've hired someone to actually take the time of history, the tkufa of history that we're discussing, and take the students on, okay, it's pre-recorded, but take them on a live, so to speak, tour of what they are studying. And I think that's awesome, that we're able to take the students via distance education and expand themselves. So even the students who are in Israel aren't going on tours this year. So the CyberSem experience, the use of distance education is enabling a rich course to be developed, and the students really can participate. And so that is my piece to that. But then one more thing that I wanted to say, I think I'm still within my time frame. And that is that in distance education, we are still able to, I feel so strongly, forgive me for this, that the students don't gain enough skills in resilience, in grit, and that's also something that Avigail did. And that is a piece in my own education that I feel strongly about. So without going into details, I have put those things. I actually got an email yesterday from OHEL Children's Homes. And I'm going to tell you that it says, I wrote it down here. They want to, how does OHEL Children's Homes want to help children recoup after resilience? And they said they sent out, we could even have downloaded it, but it wasn't, I don't need it for me, but just to tell you that the tchuna, the ability of resilience, that is what they are teaching the children. That's what they find important to teach the children and to bring the children back to be able to function as adults in a post-COVID world. And we need to bump up their resilience. And that is a piece that's part of me. I did my doctorate, my doctorate, it wasn't a thesis, on self-regulated learning, of which resilience is really a very, very major part of that. So that is who I am talking about, passion, and that's why it is, and that's why it's relevant and necessary today. And I build that into improving the resilience, the resilient factor in the students that come through my programs.
Amazing.
Thank you. Abigail, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, first of all, I would like to attend Chavi Seminary. It sounds fantastic. Really, you're doing an amazing, amazing job for all women. And we women do not get enough attention. So thank you for that. And, just to discuss resilience, that's a word that really is a strong, important word for me, because I see a lot of times with children, especially kids who have been diagnosed, that they're told because they are, we're supposed to have special care for them. We're supposed to kind of treat them more gently. This is, the world knowledge says we're supposed to be more gentle with them, not expect too much of them. What we're doing is holding back their ability to be resilient. And children are not made of glass. Children are able to make mistakes and get up and keep going. And raising a healthy, resilient child should be the goal of every parent and every educator. And if you're providing the parents, the mothers specifically, with the ability to be resilient themselves, and the message is going to really spread. And I actually have one sweet idea in my book when I talk about the parent-child relationship and how we can build our children into more resilient children, and tell them that it's okay to fail and just to work hard and you will get there. And the book is actually, we call it in my house the Sefer Shabbat. It's just a simple binder where parents during the week write down different wonderful things that the children did, but specifically things that made them push themselves out of their comfort zone. Coming back with a piece of cake from school they used to pre-COVID, kids would come back from school with cake and then take that piece of cake and cut it right in half and give it to a kid that walked in right behind it, another sibling. And, that's a big deal. You have actually stepped out of your comfort zone. You wanted to gobble down that whole piece of cake yourself, and you shared it with a sibling, holding back and letting your sibling choose the cartoon to watch this evening. Little things like that really is what builds them into people that can be resilient, could be strong, could be unfearful, and could actually look at the world as a place that they can learn from all the time, and as a place that they can become better from, as opposed to a threatening place, which is the message that unfortunately overall these children get. And the world is not threatening. The world is a place where they can become their best. And that's what they should know. So good for you, Chavi. The parents need to hear it first so that they could turn around and give that exact same message to their children.
That's great. Sounds great. And we got a comment here from Chev saying, I love that idea. In our home, we called it a victory book. Thank you to both of you. Before opening up for questions, and I believe we're gonna ask people to unmute themselves if they do have any questions to share. But before that, I have a question from our Facebook Live feed. Abigail, are you suggesting people don't really need ADHD medication?
Wow, big question. I will, well, before I answer that, I will say that I'm not anti-medication, and there are some situations in which a child does need, for a short amount of time, to get what I call, and since I live in Israel, we call it a plaster instead of a Band-Aid. But sometimes when a child's really struggling, meaning that we've tried to identify what's going on, and let's say we see that the child has what I call instant gratification personality, where the child is really seeking a lot of instant stimulus, the fun, the fast, the interesting, and that's a major clash with his environment. Because you can't do that in school, and you can't, and your parents are expecting you to do chores. But besides for that, the child is having trouble socially, emotionally, academically. I say this child is bleeding in every area. Let's take a little bit of time and use this important tool that exists, which we call medication, and let's give the child a little break. What I am suggesting is that Ritalin is not a fix for a child's brain. It's a break so that the child could gather himself, so that the parents and the teachers have enough time to create a program for him. Because a child is not struggling with a Ritalin deficiency in his brain. The child is struggling with something very specific, and we have to get to the root cause of it. And let's say, God forbid, the child is experiencing some kind of abuse, and he's acting out terribly in class and crying and destroying and is violent. And then we say, ADHD, let's give the child a pill. What that does is shut the child down, and therefore he cannot even shout and yell to us, I'm suffering, there's something wrong in my life. So anti-medication, no. But if we really want to help a child long-term, we must take the other route. And the other route is carefully looking at that child with a tremendous amount of curiosity and care and compassion, and figure out why the child is struggling, and start to build a program, which makes the child resilient and strong and able to be just like his peers and his success. There's a lot more to say on this topic, and you'll have to read my book to find out more about it, but excellent question. And I'd love to address that with anybody who'd like to talk to me about that personally as well.
Thank you. That was great. Did anybody want to unmute and ask a question, or I can read the next question in the chat, which is from Daniel. He is asking, how does diet affect one's ADHD symptoms?
I'm assuming that question is for me.
Yeah, sorry, I assume so as well. They did not specify.
You need to specify. Anyway, so I'll go back to what I alluded to before, which my children's pediatrician, when my son was diagnosed with celiac, when he said that, you know, with the celiac, which is obviously a gut autoimmune condition, because the gut is all disordered, your brain is gonna struggle. So therefore, that was just the tip of the iceberg. But the truth is that there are many, many different ways that children will develop some kind of gut disorder. And it could be something like an allergy or I'm trying to think of other gut allergies is a good example, but there are many, many different conditions that we didn't know until a couple of years ago that actually are directly connected to the gut. All autoimmunity, all allergies, skin conditions, asthma, these are all conditions that are connected with gut health. And we have to keep in mind that all of our children are eating what we call the SAD and the MAD diet, the standard American diet or the modern American diet. And basically what they're getting is no nutrients, but they're getting a whole lot of junk that their body has never seen before. So whereas our bodies haven't changed, what has changed is what we're putting into our bodies. A child's brain cannot function with zero nutrients. A child's gut cannot function with the amount of food colorings and additives that we're putting into their gut. So diet is extremely important part of my program, because what I try to do is clear out the gut, calm it down, and give it a chance to be healthy. And therefore, all of those neurotransmitters that we talk about, dopamine in the brain of a child with ADHD, guess where they are developed in our body? Well, it's through our gut. Our gut actually creates the dopamine. So if our gut's out of order, our brain's going to be out of order, and we will not be able to think and function and sit. So diet is one of the first things that I recommend if I see that the child's behavior and what's happening in the child's personal story is related to a gut issue.
Thank you so much. Anybody else have any questions they would like to ask at this point? If not, I'm going to.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
That I'm so grateful, Abigail, that your book is finally going to be published, because the world really needs to hear these ideas. I feel like it's been such a linear approach up until now. And I think that in your book, you spell out so many other ways of dealing with these issues that really society needs to hear. So I'm very excited for your books to be published. And yeah, this was a fantastic program. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that now we have a question for Chavi. How does one balance time in nature, outdoors, and online learning classes? That's again from Daniel.
I don't think it's a problem or a contradiction at all. Online learning classes, you can have them, you have an amount of time that you're learning, but as Abigail does, she has her family outside. She does her recording outside, and so as I was talking before about taking care of the whole person, as you need to a little bit of time to learn and other time to relax and explore in nature. And we all need to do that. We all need to do that. And I hope that the time that we've spent with our families, as Abigail has done, she's got more younger children, mine are a little bit older, but I hope that as she has done with her children, has taken them to let them explore and have that extra piece of emotional health and satisfaction and yishuv hadas and emotional rest, because she has taken them out. And we know very, very clearly that when a person learns and then has a break afterwards, Judy Willis, who I mentioned before, she calls it synapse. So a synapse is the space between one neuron and the other. It's more complicated, but it's not for now. But the synapse, the space where these neurotransmitters that Abigail was mentioning jump over, where they are. That doesn't jump over. It's an electrical space that the electrical movement jumps over. It needs a nap. When the brain is overdone, then it needs a nap. And when we go and enjoy nature, then we can come back and learn better. And so, although it was a little bit jumpy, I'm sorry for that, but there is no contradiction between online learning or any kind of learning and going out and enjoying nature. They really come partners hand in hand.
Thank you so much. Our next question, we're just going to keep in mind we're at an hour now, but we have 2 more questions coming in. Question for Abigail: how do parents get their kids to comply with a modified, modified diet? Is it a big project?
Okay, yes. It is definitely a project, and the project begins with the parents. Meaning you don't assign your children a diet, you do it together. When I have 2 children who are diagnosed with celiac, but I dropped gluten with them, and it became a family project. I've only been better off for it, that's for sure. But it is a big project, and you take it slowly. I walk through the entire program in the book so that it becomes much, much less scary and intimidating, but you have to take it slowly. You first get yourself reacquainted with the supermarket that you've been going to for years and look at the fruit and vegetable and grains aisle a whole lot differently, and you reacquaint yourself with snacks. But a very important part of it, and this has been vital for my family, is that we get educated together. I talk to my children and we learn new things together. We look at labels together. And I remember when one of my children, he came home from school with some candy. And he said to me, he looks at the candy and he says, this candy has in it a little teeny tiny drop of gas, and I don't want to eat that. And he threw it in the garbage. So because the food coloring is based on petroleum. And so he was educated enough to know that petroleum was something we don't want in our body. Our gut doesn't want petroleum. And but there are all sorts of things that we do. Perhaps we throw out the things with the food coloring, but we introduce some super high quality, excellent chocolate. But there's a lot of tricks. It takes time. It's a family project. We take it slowly, and it's of the more worthwhile things you will do for your child and your entire family. And sometimes it even spreads to the neighbors. I've got a cute little neighbor who comes over every night. Hey, Abigail, what's for dinner? Because he loves my quinoa. And chickpeas. If I'm having chickpeas, it's really exciting. So if you can make it into something where the children are educated, they're excited, they feel like they can do it with you, and it's teamwork, then it's absolutely doable, and everyone benefits.
Great. Thank you again for that. Last question for this webinar right now is from Jakob. For Abigail again, is there some form of intelligence in the gut?
That is a great question. So actually our brain, our gut is called our second brain, which Chavi knows a lot about as to studying neuroscience. So yes, there is a kind of intelligence in the brain, but it's very different than the intelligence of our upper brain. You know, in Judaism, when we talk about our brain, our processing, we call it the klayot valev. The klayot is really our digestive tract. It's really our kidneys, our digestive system. And that in Judaism is actually part of our brain processing and emotional processing mechanism. So to go into all the differences.
Can I interrupt, Abigail, for just a second?
Go for it.
Here we use klayot yotzot. And in my family, my husband and I, he was wondering, what does it mean, klayot yotzot? That our digestive system gives us advice. This is a phrase that's used. So I'm looking forward to your enlightening us.
Well, actually, I was going to say that I don't know if this webinar is exactly the platform to answer that question fully, but the upper brain and the lower brain both have different functions that help us process very well, which is why they both have to be functioning very smoothly. And we know that if we're taking a hard test or if we're in a stressful situation, we will feel it in our gut. And the gut and the brain have to be in smooth communication because, yes, there's intelligence in the gut and it communicates beautifully with the brain. And if we have them both working together, then we have a healthy person, a healthy child. And a big part of that, by the way, is exercising. The gut is a much, much higher ability to function well when the person is also exercising regularly and keeping their full body in check. And I always tell parents, our bodies are not there to carry our brains around. Our bodies are actually part of the team. So let's take good care of our bodies so that we can function and do well with our brains.
Great.
I hope that answered you a little bit.
There's been a lot of good information and a lot of stuff that we learned tonight. We're going to close up, but before we do, I just want to give a chance to Abigail and Chavi to talk about their own projects a bit. So Abigail, please share with us a little bit about your book, and then we'll move on to Chavi.
Okay, so I'm putting out 2 books, God willing, in the next, that was a little bit of an ADHD maneuver of mine. I wrote a book and it turned out to be so long that I had to divide it in 2, just didn't realize that I kept writing. But so the first book, Hyper Healing, will be coming out, God willing, in February. And that's directly for parents, obviously for professionals as well, for therapists, for teachers are welcome to read it. And I think that they'll gain a lot from it. But what it is a full program for parents from beginning to end. And oh, there it is. And the full program is from the beginning of trying to understand what is happening with the child. And then we go from cause to cause of ADHD behaviors, from the hyperactive to the more dreamy child, and we build a full program for each child. So essentially what it is a full therapy or coaching program in one book. And obviously a person can get a lot of feedback through my website as well and get a lot of help and resources from there. The second book that's going to be coming out a little bit later, closer to Pesach, is called, I didn't give you the cover to that one, is called Hyper Healing, Show Me the Science. That's where I answer the question about the Ritalin and really deconstruct and reconstruct everything we know about ADHD in the literature and really give parents and teachers a real understanding of what's actually happening in the science and in the medicine, and understanding of what Ritalin does to a child, how it helps, how it hinders, and gives parents the opportunity to really make proper consent when they decide on any kind of intervention for their children. So both of the books are coming out soon, and I'm absolutely incredibly excited about it. And it's in a family project. My kids are in there, my husband's in there, the whole neighborhood's in there. So it's very entertaining as well. And I look forward to hearing all of your feedback from it.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
Abigail.
so much.
And as you heard before, I run a program called CyberSem, and I really want to fill in that gap for so many women to continue their Torah learning alongside them running their families, their jobs, their children, not have anybody in their lives. But it's an upgrade, and it's seriously an upgrade, so that we can continue learning and continue being an inspiration to ourselves, our families, our students. Most important really is ourselves. We don't have anything to give if we don't keep pumping in and keeping upgrading ourselves and being positive. And so to exude that positive energy, we have exciting Limud HaTorah that you can do alongside. A person can take one course at a time. We're not limited or restricted to taking any number. Please come visit us at www.cybersem.com. And if you want to ask me any questions, you can reach me on the website also. And I look forward to any educators who want to ask me any questions. I can arrange for classes together in conjunction with yes, thank you for putting that into the chat. In conjunction with any courses that you would like to add to your seminary that can be done online. I'd be happy to work with groups that really this would add and enhance their offerings to their students and families. Thank you. Thank you all very, very much for coming.